Good evening. I always amaze myself that I get this started and it works. I just had like the usual technical nightmare before getting in here and having to reboot everything. But hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another Kitchen Live. Good evening, Crumbs. Good evening, Corkscrews. Good evening, everybody. Welcome once again to a midweek episode. We've got so much to cram in between now and Christmas that this is the only way that I can do it. One on a Sunday morning and one on a Wednesday evening. So wherever you are in the world, I hope everybody's well. We are going to get into this in about a minute's time, and we're going to be doing a reindeer coffee cake for Gina, who. Hello, my lovely. She's here. Hi. This one's for you. Gina's requested this, and I've been sort of trying to work it in, and I figured out a way that I wanted to do it and bring it into the Christmas lives as well. So this had been out on the when I put it out yesterday. I said I was going to do a tray bake cake, but actually when I've been sat there this afternoon doing bits and pieces, doing everyday work and doing the day job, I was like, I want to do a cake. I want to do this as a cake. So we're going to go in with a layer cake. And oh, here she is. Hi, Amy. Everybody's joining. I hope if you've got a cup of coffee or something else, you know, it's 7 o'clock. So whatever you fancy, put your feet up, and we're gonna get on and let's go and make a cake. Yay! I'm excited for this one, as you can tell. So yes, as usual, we'll go through the bits and pieces and then we'll go through the ingredients and then we'll get stuck in. So we're going to be making a layer cake today. Like I say, it was originally going to be a tray bake cake, but I decided to change it up a bit. This here is my original mince pie cake, but this is what it's going to look like inside. With the 3 layers and the buttercream and all the frosting around the outside as well. So that's what we're going for. It can be a really fun alternative Christmas cake as well if you wanted to. And we're going to be making a 3-tier 6-inch round cake, which is the same size as the Christmas cake that we made on Sunday. It's a really quick, easy recipe. The buttercream as well is really quick and easy, and it's going to give you a really nice, light, moist cake with a really smooth coffee flavour. It's not going to be harsh. It's not going to be overly coffee if you're not a fan of coffee. It's a really nice, smooth, sweet coffee flavour. And if you want to, if you're more of a chocolate fan, you can add a little bit of chocolate in there and lift it to be a mocha cake instead. And if you're not a coffee fan, you don't have to do this cake as coffee. You could do it as a chocolate or a vanilla cake as well. And there's loads of recipes for chocolate and vanilla layer cakes over on the blog. But because the fabulous Crumber Gina has asked for it, she got in there. We're going to be making a coffee cake. I've not made a coffee cake for ages, so I'm really, really excited to do this and then have a slice of it when it's done. So ingredients-wise, it's a very simple cake recipe. We're going to be using a self-raising flour here, 150 grams. If you're not using self-raising flour, you can use plain or all-purpose flour with a little bit extra, a teaspoon extra of baking powder in this. We're going to be using a light muscovado sugar. Now you can use a light brown sugar, a soft light brown sugar instead. If you want a more heavy, deeper flavour, you could go for a dark muscovado. But we want something that's not going to mask the coffee. We want something that's going to complement it. So a light muscovado is going to give a really nice, slightly caramel taste that works really well with the coffee there. Rather than a white sugar is going to be a little bit too harsh. You can still use a white sugar if you want, but the light brown, the soft brown sugar really, really works nicely with our coffee. We're going to be adding 150 grams of butter. This is slightly salted as usual. This has been out at room temperature this afternoon to soften, as we want it to be soft before we start mixing everything in. Helps us whip the butter up and get the air into it, which gives us a really nice light cake. I am going to be adding actually 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder. Now this is optional, you don't have to add it if you don't want to. I just like to give my flour a little extra helping hand on the rise of the cake. So we'll be adding that in as well. We're also going to be using some sour cream, which is in the fridge at the moment, or you could use a Greek yogurt, a natural yogurt, or even a buttermilk if you want to. So we're adding the sour cream. Sour cream, again, it works with the coffee to give that really nice flavour. It helps the acidity, helps combat the bitterness, and lets the sugar and everything work really nicely well together. We're also going to be popping in just a touch of the homemade vanilla extract. And we're going to need some espresso powder. Now you can use things like a coffee extract if you want, or coffee flavouring, but we're using an espresso powder. This is stronger. We don't need to make this into a paste or anything like that because it's really fine, but we are going to make it we are going to add a touch of water to it just to help it all nicely combine in. This is the Nescafe 01, but you could use there's Kenko, all sorts. If you don't have that, you can just use a normal regular instant coffee powder. Just grind those granules up a bit more first before you make it into a paste. Or you could use a shot of cooled espresso, but we want it to be a really, it's almost like a concentrate when we add it to our bake mix and to our cake batter. So the espresso powder does work a treat. And if you don't want coffee, or you want coffee but you don't want to add the caffeine, it does bake out, it's not a problem. You can also use decaf as well. I've just noticed Gina says she's got her coffee there, very fitting. I've got some squash somewhere. I did think about making a coffee, but I didn't get around to it, as the shopping man's just been. You're also going to need a couple of eggs, 3 eggs here. These are at room temperature. Again, it just helps with everything, especially when you then put it into the oven. If your ingredients are room temperature, when it mixes, it makes it a lot easier for you to make your batter. And when you put it into the oven, they're already all the ingredients are already at the same temperature, so that they're not having to work against each other and the oven heat to come up to the temperature where they all need to work together. So being at room temperature, everything at room temperature to start with makes it a lot easier on the cake batter when it's in the oven. For our buttercream, very simple. We've done this before. We're going to need some more butter. This is quite a lot here. There's 200 grams of butter, and we've also got powdered sugar, our icing sugar. There's 400 grams there with a thing on, otherwise it goes everywhere. And we'll be using the espresso powder with that as well to make our coffee buttercream. We're going to decorate this guy. We're going to put him into 3 layers. We're going to sandwich him with the coffee buttercream and the outside, and then we're going to decorate him with some chocolate antlers and some sugar paste features, a little nose and some ears and some holly and some little eyes. So if everybody's seen the unicorn cakes that were sort of in fashion a couple of years ago, we're going to be doing that, but we're going to be doing it as a reindeer. So this is why it's an alternative for a Christmas cake. It's quite fun. And the coffee buttercream is going to give us that really lovely reindeer colour that we're going to ice him in. So in terms of equipment then, we're going to be doing everything in the stand mixer as always. You can use a handheld mixer, or like I say, if you want to be strong, you can do it in a big mixing bowl with a wooden spoon if you feel that way inclined. And we've got various bits and pieces over here for decorating. I'll go through that when we get to it. And I've already pre-lined and cake released my tins, and I've just put a piece of parchment in the bottom. Now, I've got 3 all of the same size. Oops, that's going the wrong way. So I've prepared 3 tins, and I'm going to do it in layers. If you've only got one tin, you can bake this as a whole. Obviously, it's going to need longer to bake, but you'll need to keep an eye on it. So I'm doing it in 3 individual layers. So they're all prepped and ready to go. Right, let's get stuck in then. So we're going to bake this cakes or slight layers of cakes at 180 degrees, 350 Fahrenheit. So we're going to preheat our oven to start with. And on it goes. So that's ready and heating through. Now then, we're going to use the reverse creaming method on this cake, and we have used it before. I can't remember what we did it for. I think we used it on the vanilla tray bake cake towards the end of September. And the reason I'm doing it for the coffee cake is coffee cake can be quite dense. It's just one of them things, it comes together, it can feel quite dense. But with the reverse creaming method, we are, we'll combine the flour and the sugar, the baking powder to start with. We're going to sieve that all in here. Then we're going to add our butter. And the butter will, the fat from the butter will coat the flour particles and all the things that are in there. And it will help the gluten not develop as much, which is going to give us a springy sponge, but not a dense sponge because it's still really nice and light. It's just one of those things with coffee cake. For some reason, it can sometimes come out a little dense. So we're doing the reverse creaming method. So first up then, into my stand mixer, I've got my 150 grams of self-raising flour. Get rid of that. And I'm going to add my 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder at the same time. So that's all sieved together. And there we go. And then we're also going to sieve the soft brown sugar. This is the light muscovado, because this is, if you, I think we were talking about it on Sunday, there with a Christmas cake, it feels quite moist, and when you open it out in the packet, it can sometimes be quite lumped together. And it's just the nature of this sugar. It really helps keep your cake nice and moist as well. Sugar is hygroscopic, and the brown sugar really helps keep your cake moist, which is why we use it in the Christmas cake as well. I'm just going to do this with a spoon instead. Obviously, you want to make sure your sieve has big enough holes. Don't be doing this with a fine sieve because it won't go through. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. And I'm going to see how far I get, and then I might just pop it all in. But I know when I took this out of the packet earlier, it had quite a few lumps in. It's not going to, doesn't want to. Alright. I'm just going to put that in. I'm going to be a little bit lazy, but if you've got time, you could do it. That's how I'm feeling today. Cool, let's get rid of that. So we've got our sugar, our flour and our baking powder in here. Pop it on the stand mixer, and I'm just going to stir it together with the paddle attachment. If you're doing it by hand, just stir it together with a spatula or with your hand whisk, just to get everything sort of incorporated through. Ooh. And this is where having sieved that flour, maybe that sieved the sugar, maybe that you've got rid of your lumps. Right, and then all we're going to do is add our butter, and I'm going to add it just in. I've cubed this earlier, so it helps everything mix together well. Just pop that on. And we're looking now for a sandy texture. It's a bit like rubbing when we're doing pastry or cookies. like when we did the pastry the other Sunday. So we're just sort of bringing it together, and that fat from the butter is coating our flour particles, our sugar, everything, which is going to help reduce the gluten formation there. So it will give us that nice, light but springy cake, which is sort of what we're looking for here with the layers. Okay. So that started to come together then. Let's get rid of some bowls. And now we're going to add some sour cream. There's 150, there's 50 mils of sour cream here. This is obviously cold because it's been in the fridge, because I didn't want to leave it out because it's spoiled. But we're going to mix it through really well. So pop it in here. If you don't have sour cream, you can use a natural yogurt or a Greek yogurt or a buttermilk. And it just, again, helps everything stay nice and moist. So just now whisk that through. And this will now start to form like a cream texture, like you might see when you cream butter and sugar together to start. We've sort of got that sort of consistency going on here now. Just going to pop it up a little bit. I'm not going to say anything about last night's bake-off because I know some people haven't watched it yet. But oh my God, I cried. At the end, it gets me every time. Every time when they do those repeats of what people have been up to. Right. So as you can see here on the panel, we've got sort of this starting to come into cake batter texture. So next thing we want to do is we're going to add our coffee and our vanilla extract. So in here, I've just got maybe a teaspoon of cold boiled water. And with my espresso powder now, I'm going to put in 3 teaspoons of this into here, just to form a paste. Like I say, you can use decaf if you prefer. You can use a regular instant powder, a coffee powder, just to grind it up a little bit first, because we're making that paste. We don't want to add too much liquid in. And so that's all mixed up. I'm not going to turn it, but we're going to then pour it in. The reason why I prefer doing this way than using a fresh espresso is that you find you can get, like I said earlier, it's more of a concentrate, so it's a lot more stronger. When everything is together and the sugar and everything, you don't want to lose that coffee flavour. So by doing it as the paste or as a concentrate like we've just done with the espresso powder, means that you bring that all together. 3 shovels of coffee powder for me, please. You can add more if you want to. If you want more coffee, add more coffee. We're just going to pop in then a teaspoon of the homemade vanilla extract, which is smelling amazing all the time. It gets more and more amazing. But yes, you can add more. If you want a stronger coffee flavour, I would definitely, Gina, go for like an espresso powder, or this is the Americano one. They do an espresso one. They do a normal sort of gold blend espresso. Various companies do. So you can use that, but you want something that's quite strong. The barista coffee is really good as well. So that works. So I've got my coffee and my vanilla in here. I'm just going to mix that through. And then I can smell it. It smells amazing. It smells so coffee. And you'll see it's sort of starting to get darker in colour. I'm going to give that straight down, and now we're going to start adding our eggs. So normally, the normal creaming method, obviously we'd have creamed our butter and our sugar and added our eggs. Our eggs now are the last thing that we're going to add. So I'm just going to scrape down the sides of the bowl. And actually, this is the sort of colour, I don't know actually, because we've got the kitchen lights on, if you can see it, but it is that really sort of dark coffee cake. Obviously, most people, a lot of people make coffee cake with walnuts in. I am nut free, hence why we've not got any walnuts, but you can add the walnuts in. I would fold them through at the end of when you finish making the batter, but chop them or crush them up first before you add them in. Don't add them in at the start because you want everything to really nicely combine. So if you're adding the walnuts, give them a good chop or a crush, and then fold them through the batter at the end. So the last thing to do is add our room temperature eggs. We've got 3 of those. Add them one at a time and let everything combine through. There's 1. I did bring a bowl for dirty stuff. And give it a good mix. Now, somebody asked on the blog this morning that when they made the vanilla cake, they've got big air pockets in it. And you can get air pockets for over mixing. So even though this looks like we're doing a lot here, we're only doing enough mixing until it's well mixed, but everything's incorporated. If I keep going, I'm going to add more air in, and you're going to increase the risk of possible air pockets in your cake batter. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just that you end up missing a chunk of cake, and no one wants to do that. The other thing we can do is, if you do find that you may be a bit, have I got air bubbles in, is just to tap your cake tins on the work surface before you pop them in the oven. So I've got 1 egg left to add, and then I will give this just a good mix through, and we can then add these into our cake tins. So I'm just going to up it a little bit. Now it's Black Friday tomorrow, so if anybody is after things like KitchenAids and Kenwood mixers for Christmas, you'll probably find quite a few places definitely have a deal on. If you're in the UK, Lakeland always have a good KitchenAid deal, and so do Amazon. And KitchenAid themselves have said this year that they're doing their own Black Friday sale, but the K-Mix, the Kenwood K-Mix is great as well. So if anyone has them on their Christmas present list and they want to drop hints to their other halves, I get in there quite quick. Oh dear. This one is battered and bruised, it's falling apart, it needs a service, but it keeps going, so they work, they're workhorses. So I'm just making sure I've got everything off my beater. And this way as well is it's a slightly wetter mixture than normal because obviously we're adding the eggs in at the end. Just pop that in the dishwasher. But it does help us smooth things down. So I'm just going to finish off there. It smells coffee. And there we go, there's our cake batter. I'm going to need that again shortly. So, I've already prepared my 3 cake tins. And I've used, oh, I've got coffee on the work, so coffee stain on the work surface. Let me just, like that, so I don't get trouble. So we've got 3 cake tins. Now you can do, like I say, you can do this in 1 cake tin if you want. This recipe is for a 6-inch 3-layer. You could do it over 2-layer 8-inch, 20 centimeters. But we're doing this. I want 3 layers. It gives us that really lovely height for our reindeer and our features. So I've prepared each of these with the cake release, the homemade cake release that's over on the blog. And I personally, because these are really heavy gauge tins, I do the size for the cake release, but I pop a layer of parchment in the bottom as well. These are loose base, so they're nice and easy to get out. And I've had these since I had the shop. These were from Lakeland. I think they're the masterclass ones. So these have been with me now for over 10 years and they're still amazing. They give a really lovely bake. I want to try and get even layers across my cake. So what I'm going to do is weigh out my mixture as closely as possible to be equal things. So it's normally about 200, I think. So in here, I'm just going to weigh out my first lot. That's 1. Making sure I zero it between each one. There's 2. And then the layers are going to bake, they're going to be about 1 inch deep. And by the time you've got the buttercream in there and on the outside, it's quite a tall cake. So don't be overly scared. So let's see how much we've got. I wish Canon didn't have this 30-minute rule. I was watching it the other day with the video when I was doing the pastry, thinking, I've got my hands in the pastry, do not turn off now. And you can't, there's no way of stopping it. Cool, so that for here was about 210 grams weighed out across 3 tins. I'm just going to pop that in the sink because I'm going to want that again for my buttercream. And then with each of these, I'm just going to level it out, smooth it all out around to the edges. Now, I would probably, if it was a bigger tin, I'd use the offset spatula, but actually a spoon is the easiest way here now. There's 1. Just spread it out, make sure it's nice and level. And again, we're not sort of dropping down on it, we're not hammering it in or anything like that. We're just gently smoothing around to get it level. And when it's in the oven, it will level itself off anyway. There we go. If you want to, like I say, just a gentle tap on the work surface, any air bubbles, it'll help source it, move them up to the top. So the oven is preheated to 180 degrees, 350 Fahrenheit. These are all going to go in on the same shelf in the middle of the oven, and then I can have a move around. So I go usually 2 at the back, 1 at the front, and then switch them round halfway through. And these take about 15 to 20 minutes, so I'm going to go in starting with about, if we do 15 to 20, I'm going to do 10 minutes and then I'm going to turn them around after that and switch it to the 2 from the back come to the front and the 1 at the front goes to the back. Just because, as we know, my oven is ultimately temperamental when it comes to anything like this. So they're in there, and then what will happen is we'll take them out, we'll leave them to cool in the tin for 10 minutes, and then we'll put them onto a wire rack to cool thoroughly out of the tin. We'll take the base off and we'll take the parchment off the base of that. Once they're really cool, then we can ice and decorate them. We don't want to be doing anything now because we don't want to be adding buttercream because it's just going to melt if they're not thoroughly cooled. So you can normally give them about, at least a good half an hour baked like this to cool down. If you're doing this as one tall cake, it's going to take probably about 45 minutes to bake through. And then what you'll want to do is leave it to cool again for 10 minutes in the tin, then take it out of the tin to finish cooling. And then with a large serrated knife, you can layer it out. So into 2 layers if you prefer, or into 3 layers instead. And then you can just treat the layers as we're going to treat the layers here separately. It just takes longer to bake. You want to keep an eye on it. You don't want it to get too dry or anything like that. So just if you can, I always say bake in the layers. It's also quicker. So but it is more washing up. Right, I'm talking of washing up. Let's just wash this bowl up, and then we can look at our buttercream. So have a slurp of your coffee. And I'll just dry this up. So our buttercream is the simple whipped buttercream that I've made several times over on here on the channel, and also on the Facebook and on the YouTube channel. And it's quite it's just my go-to, to be quite honest, as a standard butter and sugar paste, butter and icing sugar, what can I call it? Frosting buttercream. So we're going to be doing, if we're using a stand mixer, we're going to be using our balloon attachment, which I'm going to pop on, come on. And then in our now clean bowl, we're going to add our softened butter. So yes, this has been at room temperature, as we know, so it's going to be nice and soft. And it really helps at this stage if your butter has been at room temperature, because what we're going to do is we're just going to whip it up. And we're going to use the stand mixer or the handheld mixer to whip it up. As we whip it up, it will become more lighter in colour, and it will, again, it's a bit like making a cake. We're going to incorporate air into this. So just start it off slowly and then start whizzing it through. If you're running late and you haven't had a chance to get your butter out beforehand, try and avoid putting it in the microwave. The microwave is just going to melt it. It's still going to be solid in the middle, but we want it to be sort of soft throughout. So the best way is to sort of, and there's a few tips, is people sort of get a hot bowl or a bowl warm with hot water, and do the hot water out, and then just stand it over the butter. It's a good way as well. So I'm just going to whip this up. See, now you can do this later if you've probably taken the oven, you don't have time, you can do this sort of when you're ready for it. You can also make it ahead and keep it in the fridge. You can freeze it if you've got any left over from other recipes. Especially if you've got sort of like a vanilla left over. Like I say, this can work for chocolate as well. So I'm just going to give this a scrape down and give it another whisk. So as you can see, it's sort of, it's like It's like butter because it is butter, Louise. We're looking for it sort of becoming a bit creamy, and it's starting to go that way. So this is the noisy bit. But it's just a really nice thing. You can whip in the butter like this to make a really nice, smooth, easy to use buttercream. Oh, come on. There we go. And it means that when we add our icing sugar in, it's just not that it's nice, and the two combine really well together. So our butter is whipped up, and now we get on to the, dare I say it, the messy part. The icing sugar part. This is a bit, it's not my most fun bit. So we've got 400 grams of icing sugar here. Now we're going to add it in parts. We're not going to add it all together. If we add it all at once and turn it on, it's just going to go everywhere. So we're just going to add a little bit at a time until sort of we're incorporated. So you can do this by spoon if you've got, if you're not using a lot, but start it off slow. You can also, if you are sort of too impatient and you want to put it all in at once, when you add your icing sugar, you can fold it manually to start with by hand with the spatula. If you want to, if you're finding it's a bit too stiff, use a drop of milk. And we will be adding a little liquid again, a bit like we just did with the coffee. So I'm just going to add a little bit more icing sugar. And I'm just going to add a drop of milk, just to help it. You can also use double cream if you want to. Now, if you're using like a coffee extract or camp coffee, or even you could use maybe like a cold brew coffee instead. You could use that instead of the milk. But I want to make that espresso paste again, so I'm adding a little bit there. Coming together. I can see as well I've got some icing sugar just on the bottom, so I'm going to just give that a scrape down. And a little bit more icing sugar, in. And a drop of milk. So whilst that's doing that again, we're just going to add a little bit of the boiled water still to here. Which I have to the side earlier. I'm just going to let that whisk through. And add a little bit more of our icing sugar. I've got my plastic wrap, my cling film on there, so it's not, she said, going everywhere as she got a little bit over the way. And again, we're going to measure out 3 teaspoons of the espresso powder. Oops. into 1, 2, 3. And again, Gina, if you want to add more, you go right ahead and add some more. And I'm just going to mix that up into our paste again. Oh, there's the first lot of time. So quickly, I'm just gonna, I've done this so many times. Move everything around, and I'm gonna go, they're looking really nice and level, so I'm gonna go with about, 9 minutes and just see how that is. So let's go in with the last of our icing sugar then. And scrape that in so it's got plenty to go with. And this time, instead of adding the milk, I'm going to add the espresso paste, the mix of the coffee there with the water. And actually, I'm just going to, now this is the last time it's going to be used. Going to make sure I get everything out and into there. And a last mix through. Next. And I'm going to got a little bit of icing sugar in the bottom and butter on the side. So I want it all to combine. So I'm going to just bring that all together. There. It's quite thick this evening, so I'm going to add a last drop of milk. Now this is going to give you a coffee colour like you'd expect. If you want to take it darker, you could add chocolate into this. Or you could go with one of the food gels as well for the colour. So this is chestnut. You could add that in as well to make it darker. Which I think I'm going to do. I think we're going to add a little bit of chestnut because we've got chestnut sugar paste. It's not going to change the flavour whatsoever. So I've popped a little squeeze of that in. And we'll just finish off mixing it through. So this is looking really nice and light and fluffy. So when we put it onto the cake, it'll be really easy to spread. If you are using buttercream that you've maybe made in advance, you've had in the fridge, you've had in the freezer, once it's brought up to room temperature, do give it a whip up. It just helps bring it and make it all nice and smooth and easier to pipe and ice. So that is a very lovely smelling coffee buttercream, and because I want my reindeer to be a little bit darker, I've added a touch of brown food colouring. If you're Gina and you're going to go full on with your coffee in here, you're going to get a stronger coffee, you're going to get a darker colour there. So let's just bring that all together. And I'll do a last little bit with my arms, a little bit of arm exercise there. And this here is our coffee buttercream. Now we don't need this until our cakes are ready, so I'm going to leave this to the side at room temperature, and it will be fine until I'm ready to use it. So that really is our cake and our buttercream. That's the essence of our coffee cake there, ready for decorating. And I'm just going to whiz through a couple then of the decorations of how we're going to do this. Let's put the milk away so I don't knock it over. And we're just going to whiz through some of the decorations. Now, if you've not seen the unicorn cakes that have been out there, they've got the big sugar paste horn, the little eyelashes and the eyes, and they've normally got a nose or a mouth or something. With our reindeer, we're going to give him a Rudolph nose, because, you know, most reindeers are called Rudolph. And we're going to give him some antlers, and we're going to give him some ears, and we can use various other bits and pieces as well. So, let me just get a few bits together and I can run you through here. Now, what you do and how you do it is entirely up to you guys. The full details of how I do this will be in the blog post as well, and things. So, now I've got lots of bits and pieces, and you can do this simpler as well. But I'm just going to run through a few things as well that I use when I'm decorating cakes. And what I'll do is when this guy is cooled and I'm assembling, I'll pop the video of the camera on as well and take a video of how it all comes together. So what we'll do, once these are out and they're nice and cooled and they're ready to be iced, I'm going to put them, and you don't have to do it, but I'm going to be doing this on a turntable and then lifting off. I'm going to be putting it onto a cake board, a bit like we did with the pumpkin the other week. So I'll be popping a bottom layer straight onto the cake board, and it means I can lift it around in various bits and pieces there. There's all sorts of things out there for lifting cakes. This is sort of looks like a big plaster scraper, doesn't it? This is from Wilton. It's called a cake lifter. I had this when we were doing like 14-inch cakes, which are big and you needed a little bit of support. So this would just go under, you just slide it under the base of your cake or slide it under your cake board. That's the other reason for having a cake board, is that when you slide it in, if you're going to get the cake, you're going to get bored, you're not going to sort of be jabbing into your cake and destroying all your fabulous work. So this will just slide and will help me move it around, put it onto a cake stand or wherever I'm putting it into a thing. So you know, these are they're not essential. You can do it with palette knives and some forks and various bits and pieces. But if you've got something like this kicking around, they're quite useful. Once we've iced, once they're ready, between the layers, I'm just going to be putting a layer, a smooth layer of the buttercream, and I might just pop that on with a spoon and then go over with a spatula, or I might just pipe. It depends on how much I want in there. I might pipe the buttercream on as well. Remember, we're going to have buttercream on the outside as well as the inside. So it depends if you prefer, if you're a buttercream person, a frosting person, you might just want a small amount in the middle and then lots on the outside instead. So, you know, I have my piping bags and my nozzle. When I put it on the outside then, what I will do is I'll use a spatula again and a spoon, and I will layer it on and I'll smooth it on. It's just a method that I prefer to use. You might see some people with a piping bag piping round and big zigzags, and then they'll smooth round. I just find it easier for me to, it's almost, not that I've ever plastered in my life, but it's a bit like if you see the plasterers with the board and the trowel and they put it onto the wall like that. So it's sort of like that. I'm not a plasterer, so if I'm totally wrong and that's not how it works, I apologise. Once it's on, I'll smooth round with a nice big palette knife, and then I will smooth round with one of these smooth edges here. Now you can get various ones. This is a solid one from Amazon, and it's the other side's got like a pretty texture on. So if you see those buttercream cakes with all the ridges in it. Oh, here we go. Didn't expect that. So I'm going to just test the cakes in the centre with a clean bamboo skewer. And what I'm looking for is it coming out and it's nice and clean. There might be a few crumbs on it, but it's not wet. So I'm going to just try one at a time. That's still a little bit wet, and when I press it, it's springy, but it's not resisting yet. So I know it needs a little bit longer, but they don't need that much longer. So maybe 3 minutes. And if you have watched Bake Off and various people, there was I love it, Val a couple of years ago, and then Peter on this year's episodes has been saying they listen for their cake. You might think they're really weird, but actually if your cake isn't quite ready, you can still hear it bubbling, popping and fizzing, which is just everything, the sugar and the fats and things working together. They're still cooking. That was singing to me a little bit, but not too much. So we put it on for a couple more minutes because when I touched it, it was springy, but it needs a little bit of resistance in there. It's a little bit too springy at the moment, so it's a bit soft. So whilst we wait for that, yes, our cake edges then, this one here, and what we'll do is we'll just use it to level off all that buttercream on the outside. These are from Amazon. You can get thinner, flexible ones, or you can get ones like this, which I've got and I still can't get the hang of, which you can move this up and down, and it's a metal edge, and it will level the top, so it will level the top of your cake and the sides of the cake. This definitely looks like something a plumber would have. And you can do all sorts. I just can't get to grips with it for buttercream cakes, really. I'm still pretty much old school with the flat edge. But again, you can do that with a palette knife. You don't need these things. Remember, this is stuff that I've had kicking around for years. In terms of decoration then, we're going to be making him a little red nose and some eyes and some ears and maybe a few pieces of holly and some berries on his top. And I'll be piping a little bit of a reindeer sort of swirly hair at the front as well. And we'll be making some chocolate antlers to set in the top of his head as well. For the chocolate antlers, I'm not going to do it now because it will all go wrong on camera, but I'm going to be using milk chocolate. I'm just going to melt this as always over a bain-marie, a double boiler on the hob, or you can do it in 30-second glass in the microwave. Then, if you pop it into a piping bag or into a freezer bag with a corner nipped off, or you can make a piping bag out of greaseproof. You'll pipe it onto greaseproof paper, now a baking parchment, and this is what I've done here, but as you can see, I've drawn on my antlers. Now these are drawn with a food pen, but what I will do is, this is the side that they're drawn on, I will turn it over this way, and I can see them through the paper, and I'm going to trace this with the chocolate. Let's have a listen again. I've got so much stuff everywhere. I'm going to try. Oh, he's not singing this time. That's better. That's nice and clean. Okay, so he's okay. Just going to leave them on there to cool. Oops. Yeah. He's good. And the last one at the back. There we go. So those are all cooked. So that was about 21, what would we do? 10 and 8 and 9, and then an extra 3 minutes. So about 22 minutes. Depends obviously on your oven and things like that. So I'm going to just leave them there to cool for 10 minutes. They'll start to shrink away from the edges and then I'll take them out. But they're pretty much in a good place now. So in terms of, like I say, with our chocolate antlers, what I'll do is I'll do that. It's very warm in here, so my chocolate's going to get very messy. So I'll leave this all to cool down a bit, but I will trace over the flip side of my baking parchment on my antlers and fill them all in. Then I'll do that on a board so I can move it, and then I'll pop them into the fridge to chill out until I'm ready to pop them in. And what I'll do is make sure it's really, if you're doing the antlers like this, make sure it's nice and thick. So then you've got a bit of purchase on it, and you can push the antlers into the top of the cake, and you can support it with some more buttercream swirls around the top. For his nose then and his other features, I'm just using sugar paste, white sugar paste that I've then coloured with the gel colours. So I've got a green one because I'm going to do a little bit of holly on there, red obviously for his nose, and brown for his ears. And I've already got some black still made up from the other week when we did the pumpkin. So this sort of, like I said the other week, if I'm making colours up, if I've got a bit too much, I'll just seal it in an airtight container and pop it in the cupboard until I'm ready to use it again. And these are going to get used over Christmas anyway. We're going to use them for the fruit cake as well. So for then his nose, I've made a big ball of red. This is quite a big ball. I'm going to be taking a little bit of this off because I want a little bit of pink for in his ears. So instead of making up an extra pink, I take a little ball of the red there, and I'll take a little bit of the excess white, and I can just mix the two together, just like mixing, this is the bit with the kids, it's just like mixing plasticine really, and just folding it together so we get a nice paler colour, and then we can use that for the centre of his ears. Now when I make things like his ears, I'm just going to be using a normal round cutter. I'm going to see, what time is it? There we go, a couple more minutes and things. So just say, we've now second bell again, 30-minute bell. So instead of having making up a separate pink, we've got our red here, and I've added a little bit to the white, and we've now got a pink, so that's perfect. And we've also got a little bit of white left over. For his ears then, we're just going to use some round cutters, and I've made some brown sugar paste up as well. And what I have as well, and I got from the craft store, so it's all food safe, is this egg box foam. You might have seen it in things like when you get electricals, don't use that because obviously it's not thingy. They've usually got fire retardant on it, but this is from the craft, so it's food safe, but I can use this to layer things and help shape things and let it dry in those. So for his ears, all I'm going to do is just gently roll out some of my brown here, and I'm not going to go too thin. If I go too thin when I put them on, they're just going to fall over, but I am going to leave these to dry overnight. So I'm taking the bigger cutter. This must be the inch and a bit, and then this is like this isn't the smallest of the set. Depends on the size of your cake. And I've got a disc, but I want to give him some nice pointy ears. So I'm just going to use my fingers to make a point here instead, and just smooth over. And if you're doing stuff like this with sugar paste, don't overhandle it because it will get sticky. But you can just, and I said before, it's just like smoothing over, just like smoothing a baby's bottom and things. So we get a little bit more of a teardrop effect for his ears. And what I'm also going to do then is roll out my pink. Well, I've just done with that. Instead, and I want this to be slightly thinner because I don't want it to be too chunky. And then with the smaller cutter, I'm just going to grab another circle there and do the same. So I'm just going to sort of mimic this shape on here. Now, let me just grab a little bit of my cold water again. You can get sort of sugar glues and things like that. You can use clear vodka, but if you use cool boiled water, that works just as well. And I've just got a little paintbrush here. Again, you can use pastry, but we just want a little bit. We don't want too much water, just a tiny bit, enough to make them stick. If you've got sugar glues and all of that sort of stuff where you can make them, that's fine as well. Things, but it's just helping it stick together. So I'm going to layer on now the pink, and I'm dropping it down because his pink's not all the way to the top of his ear, so I'm taking it down towards the bottom, and then I'm going to use the big cutter again just to neaten that up. Sure. So at the moment I've got this little weird chocolate shaped pear with a pink bit there, but on my phone then I'm just going to bring the bottom together so it's almost now forming a bit more of a cone, and I can pinch the top in a bit more like that. So we have this ear, and then I'm just going to leave that on here, oops, to dry overnight, and that will form around the lumps and bumps in there to give them a nice shaped ear. It's very warm in here this evening, so my sugar paste isn't necessarily behaving itself. And I'll do another one of those to fit on the other side as well. So rolling out the chocolate, the brown sugar paste, and to the larger circle, and then using a thinner pink bit of sugar paste with the smaller circle and turning it into our little ear shape as well. So I'm going to do some more of those later. For his nose then, we've got quite a lot of red. We don't need all of this. So we're probably going to take about, it's not even a walnut size. Again, it depends what size your cake is. I'm trying to think what size this is. It's not hazelnut size, it's slightly bigger than that. And it's not ping pong ball or anything like that. I'm just going to roll it in my hands to make it nice and smooth. And this is all we're going to do with him. The only thing I might do, I'm just going to leave it in the form as well, is just put a little light, like a little light reflection with a tiny little bit of white sugar paste just on one side. There. Oops. So he's got a little light reflection on his nose. And when I pop that on to the cake, what we'll do is we'll put it in most probably with a paper straw, because that's going to be able to take the weight of his nose. We don't want to be using things like cocktail sticks or skewers, because if anybody eats it, that's going to damage. Paper straw is a little bigger, and you can notice that. Or you can use dried spaghetti, dried pasta, but you're going to need a bit more, something with a bit of strength, depending on the size of your Rudolph nose. For then, if you want to put some, I'm going to pop some little berries and holly in his head. Again, just pinch a little bit of your red, roll it into little balls, and you can do that, and then get them all ready. Little berries there, simply through, and you can do that as well whilst you're decorating him. For the holly leaves, I've got a bright green sugar paste. And again, if you don't want to colour these, you don't want to buy white sugar paste, you can use the pre-coloured sugar paste that are available. And there's loads around at the moment. They're always out at this time of Christmas. So there's plenty there to choose from. You can make, again, holly leaves pretty much in the same way as the ears, but obviously if you haven't got anything small enough, you can just take a ball of the green, a bit like we did with the pumpkin, and just make that into a vague leaf shape. It might not necessarily be a holly leaf shape, but you can just form it into little leaf shapes. Or if anyone has got them, you can get holly cutters. And this one here, this is from Amazon. I'm going to use these on the Rice Krispie Treat Christmas puddings. These are little holly leaf cutters with a plunger in. Whoop, I don't know if you can see that. No. So it comes out the front. And so when you're using these, you can just gently roll out your sugar paste. You don't want it to be too thin, but you don't want it to be too thick either. And you can get different shapes, you can get single leaves, multiple leaves, etc. So we then roll this out, and with our holly cutter, just push down on the outside. Just give it a plunge. It's got a little veiner in there, so if you're cutting out, you can add a little bit of texture to your leaves. You can either pick it up or do what I've just done and pull it round. This is stuck to the board, but I don't know if you'll see it, but we end up with a little holly leaf there as well. And this can sit here again, whoops, with my other bits in here, and I'll sit it in a little hole so the holly leaves sort of form a little upward like that. So I'll probably make a few more of those before we go on. I say, I'm going to let these all dry before I start decorating the cake. The last thing for decorations is the eyes. And for these, you can either make nice big eyes with the white and the black, but we're just going to go for a little, I don't know how to describe them. They look like slugs, to be quite honest. And that's really not what we're looking for. But we're just going to make little tapered sausages. So again, we want a slightly bigger ball of that than we normally would do. And roll it out again, just with the palm of your hand, no pressure, just really gently. So you've got a sausage that's a couple of inches long, and at one end you can help just with your fingers smooth it off into a nice point, and then the other end again slightly thicker. Now when I've looked at the unicorn ones, they're sort of like eyebrows, not slugs, eyebrows. So we're going to give it, I don't know if you can see this with the camera, but it's a slight sort of S bend with this, with the thinner end being a flicker. For all the ladies out there, if you've ever done cat eyes, no, I can't do it. I cannot do them. That's the sort of look that we're going for. We're giving our reindeer some cat eyes there. So we'll do that, and then when I pop it all onto the cake, I'll just give. Well, it's not a him anymore, is it? It's a girl, most probably. If we're giving them cat eyes, mind you, it could be a boy. We'll just give a couple of little extra eyelashes at the end as well. Just stick, rolling just a few little more sausage cones just to pop on the end there. Oops. And we'll do that for both sides, so then they'll just sit on. So when we put our reindeer together, we've got the 3 tiers, we've got him iced, he's all nice and smooth. Start with the nose, pop the nose on first, you want to go in the centre, then we can position the eyes nicely on top of that. Then from there we can put in the antlers, the chocolate antlers, then they're set with the ears, with our little ears and things. And then any leftover buttercream, I'm just going to give them a little bit of a hairstyle going on there. And then add some holly and some berries through. I might also add a few Christmas sprinkles in there as well. If you want to give them a fancy paint job, you can use metallic. This is metallic gold, edible metallic gold paint. This is 100% edible. Again, you can get this in various places. You can now get them in the supermarkets. This is from a company called Rainbow Dust, who do amazing stuff. And you can just then paint it on. So you could paint this onto his eyes, give him a few little sparkles if you wanted to as well. But until these guys are out the tin, which I'm going to be doing shortly, and then we've iced with the buttercream and we've assembled it, these bits and pieces are just going to chill and dry out. If we add them too soon, any moisture from the buttercream, because they're not dry yet, they're just gonna flop, and his ears are gonna flop out as well, which is not what we want. So we're gonna that's as far as we can go with our reindeer this evening. But hopefully, Gina, you've got a great coffee cake recipe there. It is so simple, like I say, it's just the normal butter, sugar, eggs and flour, but we're adding that espresso powder in as well. Conscious that it's 8:10, crikey, Ian will be wanting some dinner. So let's just take a quick recap. We've made a reindeer coffee cake. This is a 3-layer cake, and we're going to sandwich it with an espresso buttercream. They said this is making a 6-inch cake, 3-layer 6-inch cake, but you could use the same recipe for a 2-layer 8-inch as well. You're just not going to get that height through on there. It's a really quick and easy cake to make. As you see, we've made the buttercream, we've made the cake's even out of the oven, and we've made our decorations in sort of about an hour of time, if not less, with all my waffle. It is a really fun alternative to Christmas, and you can make it ahead. You can make the buttercream ahead, you could make the cake head, pop it all in the freezer and be ready for Christmas, just to get it out, defrost it and assemble it nearer the time. If you're not a fan of coffee, don't worry, it works as well with a vanilla or a chocolate cake, or even a lemon one if you wanted to. Or you could go for a white chocolate cake and have yourself a white reindeer as well. And if you want to go with the chocolate and the coffee, you can add a touch of chocolate, add a little bit of melted chocolate into the buttercream, or a little bit of cocoa powder into the cake batter, and you'll get a little bit more of a mocha flavour, that chocolate coffee mocha flavour, which is really lovely actually. It's especially for the kids. If you like the flavour of coffee, but you don't want to add coffee, this also does work with decaf. So if decaf is more your thing, don't worry, you can do that as well. And then ingredients like I just said, self-raising flour we're using here. If you're using plain flour or all-purpose flour, add an extra teaspoon of baking powder into these ingredients. We're using a light muscovado sugar, the nice light brown sugar, which works with the caramel texture and flavour of that with the coffee, makes it a really nice smooth coffee flavour. And then we're just using regulars, butter, vanilla extract, coffee powder, eggs. We are adding a touch of sour cream in there, or you can use a yogurt, a natural or Greek yogurt, or a buttermilk, just to help the acidity from that works with the bitterness from the coffee and the sugar to sort of balance everything and give that really smooth flavour. Our buttercream, wherever I've put it, it's somewhere out here, is just a simple whipped butter with the icing sugar through and the espresso powder again. And as we've seen, we're going to make some chocolate antlers, which I'll do for you, and also we've run through the sugar paste decorations that we're going to do to assemble it. I will, when I assemble, I will do that on camera. I will film it and I'll pop it onto the page, and it'll also be in the full blog post of how to put him all together. Yeah. So then, we're gonna pop over to the end. Thank you very much for watching me. Thank you for joining me on a Wednesday evening. I can't give you a weather check because when I look out the window, it's pitch black. I hope wherever everybody is really, really safe and well. As always, if you've got any ideas, this was for Gina's idea. She really wanted a coffee cake. If you've got any ideas, please do let me know in the comments or drop me a message. We've got a few other little bonus things with requests coming up over the next couple of weeks. Next week we will be officially in December, which is utterly scary. Oh my gosh, I don't know how we've got there so quickly. But we are back on Sunday morning and we are going in for another, because you guys love them, no bake cheesecake, and it's a Black Forest one this time. So we've got lots of cherries in there and chocolate. And again, we can do this with or without alcohol. It can be either way, whichever you prefer. But that's back on Sunday morning at 10 a.m. Right here on the Facebook page, in the Facebook group, and on the YouTube channel. But in the meantime, I'm going to get tidied up. We're going to go and have some dinner because it's been a long day, and I'm sure he wants to. We're going to watch MasterChef as well, if anybody's watching it. The joys of a Wednesday evening. The mincemeat is in the fridge from last Wednesday, and I've taken some pictures, so that will all be coming through as well within the next day or so. In the meantime, wherever you are, please look after yourselves, take care of each other, please be kind, and I shall see you all again on Sunday. Thanks for joining me. Have a good evening. Bye.